apologize that we have taken quite some time before we finish this particular project, and we had some students doing exams, that is the IABEC exams, and most of our trainers who are assisting them in project exam, and that's why we have taken quite some time. But I think today will be uh, the last part of it, the deployment part of the project. And I would like to welcome Tony just to pick up from there so that we can continue.
Xavier, come up again. I think I had a network issue with my Wi-Fi.
Okay, sorry, I'm saying that you can pick up from there so that we can continue.
Okay. Good evening, guys. I hope you're all doing good. I can start with the recap. We started by having the background view. I've shared the link to this documentation right here of our project, the one that I had created using Notion. So the background of our project, it was about a credit fraud, which is a major concern for banks and financial institutions. And we got to see that fraudsters use various techniques to steal credit card information and make unauthorized transaction. So in this project, we were to explore a data set containing credit card transaction and build models to predict fraudulent transactions. So the features in our project were the time, we had amount, we had also encrypted columns in our dataset, which were the V1 through to V28, and as well as the class variable, which is the target variable, indicating whether the transaction is fraudulent or non-fraudulent by 1 or not 0, which was encoded. In this case, it was encoded. So in this project, we started with the EDA, which is the exploratory data analysis, to get a better understanding of the data. Next, we had to process our data, which we were processing by checking the null and getting to see outliers and getting to drop them, checking for duplicated rows, so that our model wouldn't be overfitting. So that because with outliers, the data will be skewed towards one direction, so our model will be overfitting. It will be an issue during the prediction. And finally, we came up with a model. Joseph covered for me this part. I wasn't available, and I could see the F1 score of the model was 100% and the accuracy was 100%. In Python, it's denoted as 1.0, meaning that was 100%. If it was like 80%, it will be denoted as 0.8. So rather than 100, we get the 1.0. So for today, we're going to deploy. So in this documentation, I've also explained how now you can use the different environments to come up with your project notebook, of which you can use the Jupyter Notebook, and also you can use the Google Colab. We'll go through them using the link I already covered. So the EDA also and the Jupyter Notebook, whereby we have all the codes that we had covered during that time, which are here, and even the classification model, which is here. Okay, and we also finish up by visualizing the confusion matrix. Joseph covered that. So for today, we're going to use to see how we can deploy our Streamlit, our project using the Streamlit library. So in this session, I'll be using VS Code. For those who don't know, VS Code is the Visual Studio Code, and that this is the icon for VS Code right down here in my taskbar. So VS Code is a it's an it's an environment used to, you can personalize it. You can have like you see in the case of like Google Colab, we were not even we were not installing libraries like pandas. Rather than we were just importing them, because Colab is specifically built and developed for data scientists. In the case whereby you have to install, it will be in a few cases, but the common ones like the pandas, the NumPy, the libraries, they are already installed. So what you do, you just import and make use to them before you execute any of your code that uses the attributes of pandas or NumPy, because you'll get an attribute error while you're trying to execute. So for deployment, first you have to come up with a folder, and in most cases you create a folder. Like in my case, I created mine under the downloads. This is because when I'm trying to access it using the terminal, that is the CMD, it was easier for me because it was working. So I don't know whichever with you guys, but you can access it using you can create your folder in any way that you want to. So of course you have to right click, then you can sorry for that. Just right click, okay, then you go to new, then folder. I've already created mine right here, which is the credit card. Inside your folder that you've created, it's where we are going now to create our app. But before you do this, you have to make sure that you've stored your data set, the one that you're going to use inside the folder that you're going to open, like in my case in VS Code. Okay, so I'll just close this part right here and have it again. So after doing all that, we're getting this app and the app down here because I've already done the project prior, but it should be in plain, whereby you just have the credit card. I'll show you where the requirements comes in place. The requirement will come in place when you're trying to deploy, because now the requirements is the libraries that you used in your project. And you see when I open them, you can see that I add pandas, I add matplotlib, Streamlit, Seaborn, NumPy, skline, the Python kernel, the IPython, GitPython, SciPy, and skitlearn. So you have to, every library that you've used, you have to create a .text file. Then you have to include the requirements. Okay. So after doing that, after creating a folder, and of course under the directory that you'll prefer, maybe the desktop, documents, or downloads. In my case, I'm going to use VS Code. I'll just and I'm going, and I'll be opening my project from VS Code. So what I'll do, I'll come to File, Open Folder. After opening folder, of course, the prompt window will come, whereby I'll have to select a folder that I want to. In our case, is credit card. Then I will select Open. Now, because I've already created, so I'll just let me delete this one. Could delete. Then now in this case, because okay, let me delete even this one. then we'll get them from the online one. Okay, delete. Okay, so this is what you'll get in the first place. This is what you'll get. This is the interface that you'll get in case that you're using VS Code. So now we create our files inside this folder, and our files, like the app one, will be .py. The reason as to why we're using the .py is because the language that we'll be using is Python, because Streamlit is a library for Python. So I'll just say app. Clicking enter now, I'll start coding in, and I've done it prior, and we have everything right here. So we'll just come, I'll copy, go back, and I'll my here. Okay, now, so as you can see, I started by importing my libraries. Of course, like I've said, if you get an attribute error, that means that that particular library needs to be installed first, because now VS Code is neutral. It's an IDE. It's an interface development environment that it's used to for many languages, HTML, CSS. Now in this case, we're using Python. So I started by importing my necessary libraries, which you could see here, which was Streamlit as ST, Pandas as PD, Matplotlib, .pyplot as PLT, my sklan.ensemble, import random forest classifier, add my sklan.model underscore selection for the train and split, and I'd sent the link for Streamlit, the open source, because it has a documentation. And so to set things like the title, use the st.title, and to have a caption, use the st.caption, and in between the parentheses, because it's a string, you have to include the double quotation marks. Because we had already had our file right here, which is in this case, this is our file. We're just going to use the pandas library to read it, and I can specify the number of rows. In this case, I just wanted to view the 1,000 rows because the data was very huge. I think it's around 92.6 MB. So that's a very large data set, and for it to be at least favorable for our viewing during when we are trying to run our app using the local host in the web browser, it will be at least reasonable and viewable in a nice way. So to display the data, as I've done in my comment, use the st.write data. Remember our data was stored under the variable data. That's why we read data. We in this case, you can choose to use any, but I chose to use data. And remember that the variable that you have assigned your data, you should always remember it, because if you're assigned data and you're trying to use df, like in the common in data science, you use df for data frame, you'll be getting errors because of the path. Yeah, it can't access your data frame or your data set, because you are trying to call a different variable while you're assigned a different variable. So I used data, the pd.read_csv, because the file is CSV, and in between the parentheses I add my credit card.csv, because it's named as credit card.csv at this point. And I filtered the rows to be 1,000. To view it, I use the st.write data. You could choose to view it as a text. You could choose to view it as a data frame, which is tabular data. So let's run and try to see how the st.write, the st.dataframe is used. In VS Code, you navigate to terminal because you're trying to use the command prompt through VS Code terminal. So I'll say new terminal. I'll wait for the path to load up. So you could say that my folder that I had created was under users, Tony N, downloads, credit card. You should be having such. Now, to run your Streamlit app in Streamlit, you use the Streamlit and Streamlit and is the code for running a Streamlit app. But now you have to give the path of it. Now in this case, it's under the app.py file. So I include the app.py. If it was app1.py, it should be app1. If this code was under app1.py, I should be calling Streamlit run app1.py. But in our case, I'm using app.py. Then you just enter and you wait for the IDE to create a local host and also to have for you a path. So you wait. At this point also, if there was any error, they will be updating themselves inside the terminal. So you're waiting. Okay. So remember the first one, we use the st.write. Now the st.write was used to display the data as text. Now, of course, we want to display our data as a data frame. We could get rid of this. So we just delete and go back to see any changes. Now, if you don't want to come every time and trying to see if the changes have been made in your local host site, you can always click on always rerun, and any change you'll be doing will be, of course, be reflected here automatically. To try and see whatever our data frame was about, I tried to have a line graph, and I add st.header. Header was the line graph. So header is used for having headers, which is here, which is my line graph from the documentation. Then st.line, line chart data. Now, st.line chart is the function for drawing a line chart. And I'm drawing a line chart for data because data is the variable under my stored dataset pd.read_ps_csv that I was used to read the credit card.csv. Now I had stored the 1,000 rows inside data. That's why I'm using the function st._line chart. Now I'm trying to draw a line chart of data. In the comments, we've seen that I've indicated that it display a line chart. This might not be suitable for displaying the data. Now, this is because it depends. Because you can see here now our line chart, it's kind of messed up. Now, you always for the EDA, always make sure that when you're trying to visualize your data, make sure that whatever that you're trying to visualize is favorable. Now, this was just for an example in our case, because I'm only focusing on the model. I'll just have to get rid of the histogram and the line graph. So I'll just come here and cut this part of it. Okay, so I have the updates. So let's get into how you can deploy your model. Now, during in our Jupyter notebook, before we got to the point whereby we're supposed to deploy our Streamlit, deploy our app into Streamlit, we had already had a random forest classifier the model that gave us an accuracy of 1.0, which is 100%, and also gave us an F1 score of 1.0. Now, Joseph covered this part whereby you're supposed to create a now to create a sidebar. This function here by st.sidebar.title was used to create this part right here. Now this is the sidebar of it. This is the sidebar of our with the different columns that will be used to key in data and have to the model to predict for us whether whatever that the user keyed in V1 up to V28, same to time and same to amount, whether it was fraud or not fraud, denoted as 1 or 0. Going back to our code here, we had already covered that part of it. So now let's see how now we can create input fields for relevant features. Of course, now you have to name your input field, which is a variable. So now for the case of time, you have to use time st.sidebar.number input. Now .number input, it's because the value that's going to be inputted will be an integer. So time refers to the column time. Now whatever this value will be inputted at time will be compared to whatever that was in the time column for the original data set, and that we had filtered for 1,000 rows. Now it will be compared. That's why we're using this that's why we're using this column for time. Now going back to our code right here, of course we have to have the inputs for V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, V6. Someone might be wondering, why not V1 or randomly? This is because when you are coming up with the model, we used all of them. So now we can't try and exclude, or rather use all the variables of the data set, which was V1 time, V1 up to V28, and the amount. I've also noticed that I've given the minimum value and the maximum value to be inputted in the fields. This one is also optional, but for I think for a development of your app, you should be having such restrictions so that it will be in an organized way or in a presentable way. And also I've had to create a button to make predictions, which I was to prepare this and have an input, which is the pd.dataframe, and also for all of them from V1 up to V28, and for the amount. And also these are now here, this part now here is which is involved in our app here. Yeah, now to predict. To predict is where the button that I will click and have my model predict for me whether it was fraudulent or non-fraudulent. So we could try and have values keyed in. Let's take, for example, even column 21 and row 21. Row 21, the time was 17. The time was 17 at this point. Just click 17. Enter. Row 21, I had my V1 to be 0.9625. 0.965. Enter. I rounded off it to be -1. And also I had 0.325 at V2, which is 0.325. Enter. I got V1, so V1 had 0.9625. Should be 160. Okay. But V3 had -0.1715. V3 had -0.1715. It must be greater than, okay, negative. Yeah. So it's been stored as 0. So as at V4 had 2.1092. 2.1092. That's answer 2. So at V5, let me try to copy. V5 at 1.12. At V6, okay. V6 at that value. And let's go to V7. At V7 at that value. V8, copy. V8 at that value. At V9, V9, V10, okay, across at V11, 11 value, V12, V12 value, okay, let me scroll across at V13, V13, V14, we had that, V14, V15, V16, we'll take to V17, at V18, at V19, and at V21, okay, at V20, of course, V20, V21, and at V22. Okay, move forward to V24. Okay. Which value did I take? V23, first, and V24, and V25, and V26, value at V27, and that value, and V28, Now amount in this case was 34.0900, and we could see the class was 0. And when we check our documentation from the background, we could see that the feature include time amount v1 through v28, as well as class variable, which is the target variable, indicating whether the transaction is fraudulent or not. Fraudulent is 1 or not is 0. So going back to our app, so let's predict. And the transaction was not fraudulent. This is because the class is denoted as 0. And when you check, fraudulent was 1 and not fraudulent was 0. Not fraudulent. Okay. So after you've had your app and everything, you have to deploy it. Deploying the app, first you need to have a Streamlit community account, and you have to have a GitHub account. Now, you start with the GitHub. In the GitHub, you use the github.com, of course. You log in, then you'll navigate through your dashboard, and you'll have to create a repository. So this is our repository. Create a new one. You'll give a repository name. We could say edit one description. How to include a README file. Then you create your repository at this point right here. And it can be public or it can be private. And also you could have a description on your repository. So we create our repository. Wait. Okay, our repository has been created. Once created, we maneuver to streamit.io community. Now at this point, it's either you'll have to sign in if you don't have a community account. If you have, or if you don't have, you have to sign up. I already have, so I sign in. And I always advise while signing up, use the credentials for your GitHub so that it can be connected automatically. So I'm signing in. Be patient. Okay. Once at this point, you could see that I had used my GitHub credentials to sign up. So it's connected automatically. So I just come, new app, click on new app, provide the repository name that I had given earlier. So in my case, this was our repository name, which is Tony Nyamao credit card 1. So go back. So it's Tony Nyamao credit card 1. It's under you have to select the branch, and the branch, you could see its main, and the directory whereby now the specific model whereby I want it to be under my files that I want to be deployed. Now in this case, our main path is the app.py because it's the one that has the prediction model and everything. In the next project, I'll show you how you can even have a different file whereby you visualized, but again now you've imported it to your main app, to your main app.py. So in our case, it's app.py. I'll have to specify and say, and this is the app URL. Once deployed, you can choose to customize it, but this is the main one. So it's in app.py cannot be recognized. So it's app.py unless I think we had two repository named the Mao 5 store credit one. That's why. But that is the correct way. And now this app of ours won't be deployed. One, uh, the data that we use to have our app together, which is the credit card.csv, is more than 25 MB. Streamlit requires if you have pre-installed data in a folder, it has to be less. It has to be equal to or less than 25 MB. Now this one was around 92, so it can't be deployed because there's a missing requirement here. And now this one requires us to have an external data source. This can be even the Google buckets, whereby you subscribe and then you are assigned some storage. Then you can use APIs to access the data from the bucket of your Google storage, Google Cloud storage. I will show that. I will try and come up with an API, and then I will update this as we're continuing with the other. But for now, that's our progress. Back to you, Xavier. If anyone has a question, you're free to ask.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Maybe I just want to add two aspects. When deploying, Tony has showed you how to deploy using Streamlit and so on. But there's something else, and he has also mentioned the issue of APIs. I think that is something, in case you have done the CDS project, you have come across the issue of APIs. So what normal happens, like if you have a mobile application, you see when Tony tried to select some numbers, it indicated that this was a fraudulent transaction. So because the model was uh, that is a bit and so on. So what normal happens, like for instance, you see when these companies that provide platforms for credit card transactions and so on, they put something we call an API in the backend. The backend is the section you are seeing the codes. Maybe then you can show the codes. You can navigate maybe through the codes. Hello, Tony. Can you hear me?
Yes, come
Yeah.
up again, Xavier. I'm having issues with my network.
Okay. I'm saying just show the codes. The codes.
The codes, huh?
Yeah.
These were the codes. The codes have already documented them. Everything
Yeah.
is inside the link.
Yeah. So that is the backend. This is what you call the backend in programming. So the front end is what you see. You go. Please go to the dashboard.
The dashboard.
The one that you are showing, this one for instance, this is the front end, maybe what the end user is supposed to see. So what normal happens, like I have been working with this from and what we normally do, if you go and download that mobile application, we are collecting some kind of data even without you are, of course we will notify you that there's some kind of data we are collecting for the purpose of scoring. Of course, as per the regulations, that is what happens. But you see now, from the back end, we have a machine learning algorithm that is running that is able to know if Matthias is a good customer or not. You can't see as a customer, you can't know it as a customer. So what normal happens, the software developers have developed the mobile application, but now we have the data that are created using what we call APIs. So the APIs are running in the backend. So that is what happens. Another thing I want to add as I conclude, like this was on the financial data, because credit card, the transactions are continuous. So for this one, okay, the model still will need some review after some time and so on. And for the purpose of avoiding some kind of financial risk further and so on, after you set your benchmark, maybe at this point, this is what will determine this transaction um, um, are fraudulent and so on. So the model evaluation has to continue with the time so that you can make some kind of adjustments and so on to ensure that because the data might change, also the customer behavior, or depending with the kind of data you are dealing with. So the valuation of the model has always continued uh, with time and so on. So I hope this has been a very good project. And Tony has shared the link, I think, to the entire documentation and so on. Yeah, we will announce the next project, of course, but we need maybe more guys to participate also in that one, so that it is good to participate because you get more and more skills and so on. So I don't know, Tony, do you have anything to add, or anyone who has a question before we end our session? Any question, team members? Okay, it seems we don't have a question. I'll share the recording. We have been recording the session. I'll be uploading it, then I'll be able to share within the next few minutes. So thank you so much, Tony. The entire team, I think this project had some team members who took also some parts of it. I remember we had Brenda, we had Tony, Eugenia, I think Duncan, Diego, you were part of it also. We had Billy, and of course, all participants. We have David, Matthias, and so on. I'm looking forward to that. The next project, we even have more people volunteering and so on. So we will continue even doing more AI-based complicated projects and so on. So the current ones still are basic, and I hope that we will be advancing as time goes by. For instance, the team that did this one now goes next time to a more advanced project in such kind of a format and so on. So thank you all once more. Have a nice weekend ahead. Yeah, see you all in the next project.
Thank you
Okay.
too. Have a good
I
weekend.
will share the link also to WhatsApp.
Thank you.